I bow down to that deity who has the face of an elephant, who is served by the Ganas, associates of Shivaji, who eats kapita and jamun fruits, who is the son of Uma, who is Mother Nature herself, who removes grief and all kinds of impediments. Please remove all impediments in my study of Jyotish. This is from Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra by Maharshi Parashara. So I'm going to try to give a very good coverage, and by the grace of my gurus and by the grace of Ganeshji and Bhagavan Vishnu, I pray that it will be successful and you will all be able to get some inspiration and have a good start on your objective to understand Jyotish. Many people do not really understand the premise of Jyotish as it relates to karma, and that's really what it's all about. What are the qualifications of a Jyotishi? And finally, what are the divisions of Jyotish? We will try to steer you towards being able to use tools that might, for example, allow you to calculate your kundali or the kundali of a client, but actually to interpret it. It's a very tricky thing. So we're not going to try to do that. That's really far out of the scope. As an Ayurvedic practice, you really want to understand how Jyotish relates to Ayurveda, how it relates to karma. Because remember, this gets back to our core definition of Ayurveda. What is the definition of Ayu? Is to have a good state for the entire being, for mind, body, soul. And we consider the karma of the living being. We consider that the living being is the Atma within mind, body, intelligence, ego, within the wrappings of the Sukshma Sharir and the Sthula Sharir, the subtle and gross bodies. We have simultaneously, even though our view on the different elements is somewhat simpler than that of medical science, modern medical science, it is equally scientific. It is also very subtle, and it deals with subtleties and complexities of our existence that modern medical science simply doesn't go into. If you ask a doctor, who am I? Am I the body or the soul? They'll say, well, that's not really part of our practice. Well, it is for us as Ayurvedic practitioners. The karma, your past lives, and the effects of what you do, these are all things that affect your well-being and your happiness. And Jyotish can give us some insight into. And you may yourself also decide that you want to practice Jyotish. You may want to study and practice, and this may take time. It may take many years to become adept in Jyotish, but this would be a good starting point to have a reason for doing it. So let's start with the basics. What is Jyotish? The Sanskrit word Jyoti means light, and it is the knowledge of light as that which dispels darkness. In the Vedas it is said, Tamasema Jyotirgamaya. Do not remain in darkness. Go towards the light. There is an inherent understanding that this world is a world that tends toward darkness. Without the sun, everything is in darkness. We have the illumination of the sun. We have illumination of the full moon. Yesterday here in central Texas, we had an event, a solar eclipse. And in Jyotish, this is considered an inauspicious event, a highly inauspicious event. There are ancient texts on astronomy, such as Surya Siddhanta, which give very accurate methods for predicting lunar and solar eclipses. Why? We don't really make a distinction between astronomy and astrology, except Surya Siddhanta is not a book about Jyotish or Vedic astrology. It is a book on astronomy. And some people have given very strong arguments that date for Surya Siddhanta, it would have to be somewhere between 5,000 and 15,000 years old, or between 5,000 and 18,000 years old, because because it describes a south pole star. There has not been a south pole star for about 5,000 years. This is what we refer to as Vedic astronomy, being able to predict eclipses. The timing of eclipses and the timing of the suns moving through different parts of the fixed zodiac is also how we determine the names of months and whether the leap month. So Jyotish is a Vedanga, and we'll also talk about eclipses a little bit more in detail as well. Jyotish is a Vedanga. It's one of 6 limbs or appendixes to the Vedas. It is very important, and generally it's accepted to be at least dating from 3100 BCE. So that's at least 5,000 years old. Many of us believe that it is considerably older, but the history in written texts is generally what is considered the definitive date for something, according to archaeologists and historians. And the written records are simply not there. They just don't go that far back. And honestly, unless a written record has been etched in a stone or it has been etched in a clay tablet that has been exceptionally well preserved and not broken or looted or smashed to pieces by invaders or used as bricks to build another structure, there is not something that's going to be an acceptable evidence. We have good evidence of the ancient Egyptian culture simply because they did it in such a huge scale and there was no water erosion and there was not a significant amount of destructive plundering from invaders that happened later. But in terms of old texts, this was all an oral tradition and it was a spiritual science. It was a Vedic way of life. The person practicing Jyotish is a Jyotishi. That's basically, it was something that you could find in every village. You could find someone who was a practicing Jyotishi. Like literally, you should be able to go walking distance from your house and find someone who is a Jyotishi, who understands by looking at the qualities of time. The qualities of time is determined by the movements of luminaries. The sun, the moon, the planets, these are all called luminaries. The moon, the planets, these are all called luminaries. And luminary is Jyoti, right? So that which gives light. And the qualities of the light given by different planets is different. This is really the essence of what Jyotish is all about. Now we're talking about Jyotish Veda, okay? So Vedic astrology, which is also called Jyotish Veda, and sometimes we'll just say Jyotish for short. This is the science of light. Just as we say Ayurveda is the science of life, Jyotish or Jyotirveda is the science of light. Vedic science is really about self-knowledge. We refer to self-knowledge as Atma Vidya in Sanskrit, and knowing the self leads to self-realization. This is especially true. You have learned about the Shaddarshan, the 6 philosophical systems. 3 of them, Yoga, Vedanta, and Nyaya, these are aimed at understanding transcendent. In other words, how do we understand those things which are beyond our vision? We have to apply self-knowledge and we have to apply logic and also have to rely on Vedic authority to understand the self. This is called Atma Vidya. In ancient times, understanding of Atma Vidya was understood to be the most important thing in life. So Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. These were the 4 Purusharthas or goals of human life. Dharma, to practice one's duty, to follow a process which might be called religious, or we might say to execute duties, to gain economically so that we have enough to live and we are able to eat. This is Artha. Kama, how to enjoy life, how to have some pleasure. And finally, Moksha. How do we get ultimate release from the cycle of birth, death, disease, and old age? So Vedic astrologers had an understanding of spiritual knowledge, and they had a reputation for very accurate predictions and also for knowing about remedial measures. And my Jyotish guru was the Jyotishi to Ms. Indira Gandhi. And he even warned her before her assassination, but she didn't heed his warnings. He warned her that about something that was going to happen, and she did not take his warnings to heart. Astrology is considered to be a limb of the Vedas, and sometimes it is also called the eyes of the Vedas. Understanding self-knowledge is the basis of everything. It's the basis of all knowledge. So Jyotish gives us the opportunity to see our true being. It gives us an opportunity to peel back the layers of mind, intelligence, ego, and look at the journey of the soul, the journey through our different births, through reincarnation and karma. And the planets give us a picture of the karmic influences. Everything in our chart is about our karma. What is the karma that has led us to this birth, and what are the things that are shaping us? So we have come in this body, and most of us do not remember our past lives, and we have had many past lives, and they also shape our direction, where we're going. We just don't have a very specific knowledge. Like in my past life, I wanted to play the violin. I wanted to be the best violinist, and I worked very hard at it. And then I'm born in this life, and by my karma, I'm born in a family that can afford to get me a violin, and I can have violin lessons and maybe go to a conservatory. And that is not a coincidence. Or let's say that someone says, hey, I want to be a doctor. Maybe they were a doctor in their previous life. They want to go to medical school. They want to practice medicine. Maybe it's very specific. Maybe they were a very successful neurosurgeon, and they want to study neurosciences, and they want to be a neurosurgeon. So they're going to go through a lot of hoops to get to that point. That is what we refer to as destiny. Destiny is something that we have created by our own activities. This is one of the huge confusions that many people have when we start talking about Jyotish and astrology. They say, oh, you're saying that everything is predestined and we don't have any free will? No, the problem is that our free will is somewhat limited, and that is because of trigunas, the three qualities of sattva, rajas, and tamas. But to make a very long story short, we have been doing things and we have been associating with trigunas for lifetime after lifetime, and that has set us in a certain course. Think of it this way. Think of our trajectory through this world like we're in a baseball game or a cricket match. And the gunas, they are like players on the field. And some of the players, when the ball comes by, they kick it in one direction. Another player kicks it in a different direction. And then another player picks the ball up and throws it in another direction based on where it ended up. And we come through the curtain of different lives and we say, oh, where did that come from? How did I come here? You already had a trajectory based on where you were going. You made choices and you went different places. It's a limited analogy. Let's say that let's use soccer or football as an analogy, except that the soccer ball has kind of the ability to change its course a little bit. So it's going to roll towards one player who's a really good kicker, and they'll kick it in a certain direction. Another player is not a good kicker, and they'll kick it in the mud. And once it's stuck in the mud, nobody wants to go do anything with it. It might wallow there for a while until someone comes to get it out. But the point is that there is some limited free will, and we don't see what is in the past life. Jyotish gives us the ability to have insight into that. A really good Jyotishi can give someone insight into, oh yes, so in your past life, you lived in such and such village, your name began with this, you had this profession, you had 3 children, and you died at the age of 71 while you involved in an accident or because of heart disease or something like that. These are all things that a truly skilled Jyotishi, and I am not that type, okay, so I do not have that level of insight, but people like my Jyotish Guru, they could tell you that. My Jyotish Guru could tell someone who walked in the door how much money was in their pocket, where they had just been, what their questions would be, and what their answers to their questions would be. Because this is a divine science. It gives revelation from, it is given from the devas. It is not something that comes just by calculation. You cannot do Jyotish by having a software program, and I know this because I started out, my involvement in Jyotish was about 45 years ago. I started writing software to try to calculate Jyotish and also to see if I could piece together interpretations, which I found was a great source of entertainment for people, but not terribly helpful. All right, so Jyotirveda is very deep. What are the 3 divisions of Jyotish? So there are 3 divisions. One is called Hora. Hora is mapping the result of karma in an individual's life based on their time of birth and place of birth. So there's 3 things I always say: time, date, and place of birth. And that's how we calculate your horoscope, or we sometimes refer to it in North India as the Kundali. We want to know usually the time within 10 minutes or better, and the place within 10 kilometers. So, if someone says, yes, I was born in New York City, where in New York? Do you know the name of a hospital? It's important because this actually can change things somewhat. Time, date, and place of birth. Another one of the divisions of Jyotish is Ganita, which is the mathematics and calculus. Calculus was not invented by Isaac Newton. He rediscovered calculus. It considerably predates, and of course, it's well documented in the works of Aryabhata. The placement, movement, calculation of movement of celestial bodies like the moon and planets, etc. Here, there's a lot of overlap with Surya Siddhanta. The Surya Siddhanta is known, and there are commentaries on Surya Siddhanta. It is an ancient text, but there are also ancient texts on Ganita that have been lost, just like with Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, there are many books of Ayurveda which have been lost. Some of the best known are the Sushruta Samhita, Charaka Samhita, and these in turn are based on other texts that have been recovered from lost texts. So there is so much knowledge that's available, but there's so much more knowledge that has been lost because the oral traditions were lost. In some of the many invasions of India, there were loss of scholars who were the authorities, and the lineages of knowledge, particularly in the current age, Kali Yuga, have been lost.